So, we've seen the concept of time traveling as a main story arc being thrown at us a large number of times. From a hit or miss ratio, a lot of the time it's more of a miss because all it does is confuses the crap out of us. However, there are a few gems in the cartoon world that has been able to use this concept very well. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jason Blade, and this is a closer look at Time Warp Trio. Man, I remember the time when the Discovery Family channel was called Discovery Kids. It wasn't as well known as the Big Boy channels or even PBS Kids. But still, from time to time, when none of the main go-to channels had anything interesting going on, I looked on once on this little channel and I grew to love Time Warp Trio. I haven't watched the entire show, so I can't give you an overall take on it, but I still want to talk about at least one episode. Before we do that though, I want to give a quick rundown. Time Warp Trio was featured on Discovery Family, formerly as The Hub, formerly as Discovery Kids, from July 2005 to July 2006, with sadly only having one season. It's about a 10-year-old boy named Joe who received a magical book on his birthday from his cool magician uncle, Joe the Magnificent! Turns out the book forces Joe and his friends, Sam and Fred, to travel around in time. So the boys will have to do everything they can to find the book in order to go back home. That's pretty much it. So let's get a closer look at an episode. 2105. The episode starts off with the boys being teleported in what seems like a modern day room, until a floating robot comes up to them asking for a number. Now, it could be that the robot is asking for a code to make sure they aren't trespassing, or it could be asking them out on a date. Come on, robots need love too. Could struck the iron while it's on, huh? I'll see myself out. Anyways, I do think starting the first few seconds in a room that seemed modern is a decent start to get the viewer to think what year they are actually in. Then this robot comes in and raises the stakes, demanding some type of code from them. Of course, the boys frantically panic and start dishing the bot random numbers, but it only caused the bot to be more aggressive. Whoa, Rob, I told you I'm not interested, and threatening people isn't going to get you a boyfriend. Then we head into the intro for the show. By the way, you totally need to see it. Nothing screams awesome like it. You know what? I'm going to give you a snippet of it real quick.
Be careful what you wish for.
Oh man, I love this theme. So hype. Back to the story. We now see the three boys on a school field trip at a museum in their present day, which gives you the idea of what the plot pattern is for each episode. Starting it off with them arriving at a certain time in history and putting them in a life or death situation right off the bat. Then after the theme, we get the prologue of the episode before they time traveled. Now, I know we've seen this type of story writing countless of times and it's pretty cliche, but it's a solid one to go by if done right, and they do a decent job at it. We hear a little bit of narration from Joe, which, it's not the best way to start an episode. Narration to me is more telling than showing, and it can be a bit boring. Thankfully, he only does the narration for a short period of time. After Mean Teacher Man gave the class a worksheet to the boys messing around, we were introduced to a feature of the book where you set up a specific date to travel to. It gives us a hint that we're going to be introduced to new things. This gave Fred the idea that they can go ahead 1 month to find out who wins the World Series, but ended up screwing up the numbers and sent them a century into the future. Dude, seriously? Of all the events you want to go to at any time, you want to go to a championship game for the most boring sport ever? You could have at least went to the opening week of the NFL. What? And then we go back to the current situation, with the robot preparing to shoot an ad in your face. Darn it, Rob, I told you no already. We're then introduced to the director of the museum, Green, who shoos Rob away from the boys, assuming they're working for her. She teleported them to the 2000s room, where they're expecting to do 2000s things, like reading a book or watching the television. Guess it didn't expect technology to improve that fast, huh? Well, so far, the future concepts that we've seen aren't exactly spectacular. With only seeing the advertising robot and a teleportation device that was very cheaply used for a transition, it's not as creative as you would hope it to be. Which isn't so surprising considering the animation for the show is pretty bad, even for 2005 standards. The director goes her merry way and leave the boys to... Sam, how about you explain it?
Let's see if I have this straight. We warped ourselves into the museum, only we're 100 years in the future playing kids from the past, which is our present.
Yeah, very peculiar situation. Peculiar enough for both Joe and Fred to goof off and break things like all 10-year-old boys do best. Director Green comes back livid and snatches the book out of Sam's hands, fires them, and kicks them out. Another example of escape going right through your hands. Then Joe has the audacity to get mad at Sam, like he wasn't the one trying to play around with the situation first and start roughhousing in the dang first place. Like, stop trying to act like it's all... What are you looking at?
Oh, man.
Meh. Again, the overall animation just doesn't give the wow factor you would expect in a futuristic setting. It doesn't even help that the ideas and execution is overall lazy and unimaginative. Random flying devices and science screams future! Ugh. The boys are mesmerized by the technology being used before them while Fred notices some girls staring right at them. You know what they do next? They run away because cooties! Sorry, I couldn't help myself. They were able to successfully escape from jumping into some bushes as the girls passed them, which is a bit weird considering they clearly noticed them before hopping on their anti-gravity discs. It could possibly be the speed they were going, but what the heck do I know? Then another advertisement shows up as a hologram. I swear, it's like the only way this show can introduce new technology is through advertisement. Anyways, the boys find themselves traveling the sewer line for whatever reason, and finally reach the surface. So Joe tries to think of a game plan to get the book, but Fred thinks with his nose thanks to a pizza aroma device? Ugh, come on! Are all the inventions going to be based on food advertisements? Though, I can't say that it's been the most intriguing one thus far. It's not really much, but it does make me wonder if that scent is artificial, or the scent is being carried from the oven through a little vent that only triggers from any motion sensors. Joe and Sam walks in the restaurant as Fred orders a lot of pizza. 5 to be exact, that costs a total of $150! Bruh, that's like $30 a slice! I know inflation is a thing, but that's ridiculous! Then Sam asks about where to get the flying discs, and apparently this guy has some of those too. I'm sure those things are gonna cost $3? What? So, coincidentally, Fred does have $3 for the discs, and Joe tries to sweeten the deal with his disappearing coin trick for the food. Really? Obviously, this doesn't work, and they get rightfully kicked out. The scene was pretty fun to watch. It gives us an idea of how the economy is with the comparative pricing between the discs and your everyday fast food. The fact that pizza costs 30 times more than an advanced item used for traveling gives the fact that food is going to be very scarce a century down the road. Another thing to notice is the conveyor belt in this restaurant. While it's not necessarily futuristic as it's known to be used in Japan, it does show that the Western culture in America adapted some ideas of the Eastern culture in Japan at some point, which is neat. Finally, some decent ideas of what the future would be like. So the boys get a chance to try out their new toys and accidentally bumped into the 3 girls again. And you know what they do? They run away because cooties! Okay, I know. The chase scene was the most colorful and fast-paced in this episode. Being able to get a couple of funny snippets during it, like Sam slowing down a bit so he doesn't get hit by a car, and Joe almost getting hit by a tree for not paying attention, just to get hit anyways by a toilet paper robot? Okay, time warp. Side note, since Joe got hit by a toilet paper roll, and they're made from trees, he still technically got hit by a tree, so yeah. And again, another advertising bot! So the Cootie Girls finally catch up to the TP boys to talk with them. They finally introduce themselves as Samantha, Jody, and Freddie. Wow, very unique names. The girls invited them to Jody's house to get some food and continue to discuss from there. We're introduced to more futuristic aspects with scanners to teleport to the dining room and floating tables and chairs that the boys don't know how to sit on. Samantha got a bit of a chuckle out of it, and Fred tries to retort back by talking about the weird shades she's wearing. However, instead he ended up learning about another invention that plays the song that relates to the mood you're feeling. Yes! More interesting technology that doesn't have to deal with crappy ad placements. Though, for the music idea, it would have been better to use some futuristic headphones or something. The goggle design is pretty underwhelming. Anyways, Joe starts questioning why the girls brought them there in the first place, and Jody answered back by giving him his worksheet. Ooh, the truth is about to be revealed. Joe then turns it over and it read, "Girls, meet us under Teddy Roosevelt's statue at the Museum of Natural History on September 17th, 2105. It's a matter of life and death. Sincerely, Joe, Sam, and Fred." Now there is one thing I'm going to be nitpicky about. How in the world was that note able to stay in that book for so long unscathed? I've left papers in plenty of books before, and they don't come out without a single wrinkle in it. So what's so magical about this one? Well, it is in a magic book. Anyways, the boys start to ask more questions about this note, and the girls explain they got it from their own book. Which meant that these girls are their respective great-granddaughters! And yes, they are a part of the main cast in Time Warp Trio. That means different combinations in each episode, which is something I really enjoyed about the show. But I'm getting off topic. The boys faded from this knowledge, but shortly after they woke up, they started to believe the girls. While they hanged around for a bit, Jody's book disappeared, which meant they were back in square one with Joe's book still stuck at the museum. Or are they? Samantha came in to save the day with her time-traveling pocket watch, so that we're able to go home and things will be back to normal. Only there were some technical difficulties and the boys met with past obstacles. Then they jumped ahead to 2106, where during that time Samantha disappeared, and they were at the World Series between the Yankees and the Red Sox. Ugh! So the boys went back to 2105 and Samantha returned. Well, half of her anyways. And that made Sam realize that if they don't get the book and go back to their own time, the girls will cease to exist. Once again, the stakes became higher, and they rushed back to the museum. They successfully snuck into the museum, and we find out that the Loch Ness Monster was discovered in 2056? So in 40 years, the truth shall be discovered! I'm ready, senpai. Anyways, the crew made it to the 2000s room and they found the book. The problem is getting inside. With no way to break through the glass, they have to get it in the old-fashioned way. The air ducts. By the way, where in the world do they get the blueprint of them? We're then introduced to what I think is the coolest scene of them sneaking into the vents. There was a funny bit as well with the boys using their own strength while the girls used their discs. Not only was it absolutely hilarious, it did show the contrast between their respective timelines. However, from common sense, why didn't the boys use their discs as well? It would be much easier on them. So now the gang made it above the targeted room, and they needed to decide who they want to lower down to grab the book. They decided that the lucky girl would be Freddie. I do love how Samantha and Freddy contrast between their respective granddads as well, with Freddy being the more timid than Fred, and Samantha being the more confident and bold than Sam. Freddy reluctantly agrees to be lowered to get the book. When she reached for it, she was caught by Director Green. The crew panicked and dropped Freddy, getting caught in the process. After capturing the gang, Director Green talks with the authorities about the charges she's ready to press, and you know what she did next? She decided to shred the book to avoid future thievery! Really? In doing so, the girls disappeared and Green freaked the heck out. The boys felt defeated with no other way to fix things.
Hey guys, look what I have.
Oh, Sam, you sly dog, you. They used the pocket watch to go back in time to fix their mess. And what was their plan to get it back?
I'm going to vomit!
Yeah. After retrieving the book, they were backed into present day. Before going back to their normal lives, they immediately wrote the message to the girls. Teacher then comes in and add another worksheet at the end, and that was 2105. So overall, the episode was a decent showing. They didn't really use the futuristic aspects to its full potential, but considering the limitations to its animation, I could give it a pass in that regard. The overall story had its silly moments and is enjoyable with the introduction of new characters, and the relations between all of them is pretty solid. It's definitely an example of a show that isn't star-studded in the slightest, but is a great pastime show. Thanks for taking the time to see this review. If you would like to see more reviews, make sure to click the subscribe and bell icons to get the latest from me. I would love to hear your take on the show if you've seen it already in the comments section below. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.